Yes, yes! Put it in drive! Then what?
For it?
No!
Freeze, mister! Big toe!
Oh, gracious! Oh, gracious! Oh! We haven't crashed yet.
Well, just got off the highway. I feel like something's weird with the car, so we're gonna stop. I think we might have a flat tire. So the first thing that we gotta do is put on our blinker lights and pull over. So that's what we're gonna do right now. Before we start changing the tires, it's important for us to familiarize ourselves with the tools that are required. We basically only need two tools, which are a wrench and a car jack. These two items should be included in pretty much every car, as they're the only thing that's necessary in order to change pretty much any tire on any car. The first thing that we have to do in order to change the tire is to loosen up the bolts using the wrench. It's important to loosen the bolts before we start raising up the car, because that's going to allow us to remove the tire a lot easier down the road. Remember, you don't want to completely take out the bolts, just loosen them enough to where they're easier to take out later. Next, secure the car jack underneath the tire and begin raising up the car. This process can take a few minutes, so we're going to check back in with Johans once that process is complete. Now that the wheel has been raised up enough to where it's no longer touching the ground, we can go on to remove the rest of the screws quite easily. As a bonus tip, you can keep a bucket in your car to use as a stool for situations like these. This will allow us to avoid a lot of unnecessary knee and back discomfort as we're changing the tire. We've now reached the halfway point. The next step is to remove the flat tire in question and swap it out for the spare tire that you should have in your trunk. After you've lined up your new tire next to the car, carefully raise it up and line up the holes on the tire with the car until the tire locks into place securely. Next, secure the bolts back on the tire. Remember that it doesn't have to be a tight fit, just enough to secure that the tire won't fall off as you're lowering the car back down to the ground. Once the bolts are securely placed back onto the tire, we can use the car jack once again to begin lowering the car back onto the ground. The good news is that lowering the car takes significantly less effort than raising up the car, which means we're almost done. The final step is to use the wrench one more time to tightly screw the bolts back onto the tire. You'll notice that the reason why we wait to screw the bolts back on until the car is back in the ground is because we don't want to be moving around the car too much while it's suspended in the air. And with that, we have successfully changed our tire. We can now keep driving temporarily until we find a new tire to replace our flat.
There are many safety hazards while driving, which you should be aware of at all times. Coming up, there's a bike on the left. Remember to keep your distance, slightly slow down, and share the road.
You should also be aware of pedestrians crossing the roads. Keep in mind, pedestrians may not always be visible. Coming up, there's a pedestrian hidden behind the white truck. You should immediately press the brakes and let them cross the street.